Now we'll start a panel discussion on the subject of trains in education in India. And we have galaxy of star speakers for this session. Uh, I welcome Dr. Manjula Pujashroff, MD and CEO, Calorix Group, to come on stage. A big round of applause for her. I request Mr. Dinesh Menon, CEO, Education Skilling and Consulting Services, Vivjio Group on stage. A big round of applause. We welcome you. I request Mr. Anuruddh Gupta, CEO, DCM Group of Schools, to come on stage, please. A big round of applause for him. Mr. Rajiv Katyal, Country Director, Global Schools Foundation, India. We welcome you, sir. I'll request Manjula ma'am if you can kindly moderate the session. Yeah. It's over to you.
Thank you and good afternoon, everybody. It's always good to see the room full after lunch because once we've fed you a good, big lunch, most people just go home and take a siesta. But I'm sure this is going very well. So, you know, we were earlier just chatting up in the speaker's lounge and we were wondering what we're going to talk because new trends in school education in India is such a wide, big topic that you can go everywhere and possibly still not touch the surface of it. Let's see how we want to do it. I'm going to just set the context a little bit, talk to you about what is currently happening in the country, what's the biggest challenges we're facing, and then each of our panelists will bring in their viewpoints. And of course, we'd love to have an interaction with everybody here. So let's start. School education has got a lot of attention, as you and me both know, in the past couple of years. It's for good, for bad. The reason I'm saying bad is because I believe that a lot of our reforms that exist in paper do not really exist on the ground. And there's much to do before we move on to the next level. So at planning stage, we're just moving on, taking leapfrogs. But at implementation at ground level, we're still struggling. And that's why it's bad. But at a thought level, at a planning level, at strategy level, everything that's happening in the country in terms of educational reforms are very good. So let's just take a case of grade 10 examinations. We did it unto death and, you know, children were all stressed and didn't have time for anything, for development, adolescence issues because they were having so many challenges between 8th and 9th and 10th, and then there was this huge pressure of academics. So we did away with it. And then it's back again. Because most educators, you know, when the policymakers took a feedback, most educators said that it deserves to come back. Now also let's take CCE. In my personal opinion, I don't think 50% of the schools have begun to fully implement CCE. And we already now have a new testing pattern. And that is the gap that I'm talking about when I say that, you know, we need to possibly stop, breathe, consolidate before we leap to the next level. Let's take another example. There's this huge debate going on about textbooks, whether we should use NCERT, whether we should use publications, private publications, all of that. If I were to take another example, let's talk about, you know, variety of states have different benchmarkings. You know, it's a concurrent list subject, so there is a central diktat, then there is a state diktat. Let me now also come to the burning hot topic in the country today, which is the fee regulation bills. Every state is introducing their separate fee regulation bills. There's a huge amount of parent activism. I mean, you know from the time that you have started your careers, the respect for this fraternity, the academic fraternity and the teachers is at its bottom. Parents no longer respect school education. They, you know, overnight we are considered, if I may use the word, mafia. It's not a happy situation at all. I mean, when our students look, you know, students will learn from the parents. If parents look at school with such a distaste, with such disrespect, what's going to happen to the kids? So we are at an all-time low. School education, private school education in India has sort of lost its shine, which is rather pathetic because I think the backbone of this country, the backbone of every skill, the backbone of every profession has been provided by private school education. Be it a lawyer or a bureaucrat or a minister or a politician or a pilot or an engineer or whoever has come out of our schools. So the situation today is not happy. We're hoping that the whole thing will, in another couple of months blow away and we can kind of stabilize. Until then, let's see, within that given scenario, what is the trend going to look like? I've got a lot of eminent speakers here. They'll bring to the table a lot of experience. Let me start on my left right here with Vinesh. Apart from being a school CEO of Global Discovery, he also does consultancy and transaction. So, from that kind of a background, when people come from private background, they look at it a slightly more macro, rather than when we come from academic backgrounds, we're far more vertical or narrow in our focus for academics. But when we've had, and in the past couple of years, we've had a lot of very good infusion from private industry. So let me start with him. So what, according to you, is the new trends? And are you happy about the way things are going in terms of trending in school education? And if you were to look at a little horizon about 3-4 years, where do you think we'd be?
Good afternoon, everyone. So one minor correction, I'm actually transitioning from Global Discovery into the Wipure group. But that's fine, but it's the same, in the same ecosystem. So a couple of, a few observations like you asked me. I think one, you tend to hear a lot of buzzwords these days, which are very, starting to now become a passive. Global citizen. Okay, the child should become a global citizen, all-round development. You're starting to see advertisements so much now talking about what we'll do to a child the moment he enters the school and what he will become the moment he comes out. I've actually seen a hoarding which has a pictorial depiction of a child walking into a school and out comes Einstein. Okay, and this is now everywhere, whether the school offers it or doesn't offer it. It's now becoming a big marketing mechanism to attract enrollments and admissions. The second observation that I have, you have touched upon it already, but I think this whole debate, this whole government schools versus private schools debate is starting to now get a little, it's not leading anywhere. Every seminar, every conference we touch upon this. At the same time, we are really not able to make inroads into actually solving the problem. Is there a method to collaborate with the government? I don't know yet. The other common link is this whole skilling program which started happening in some of the schools, or other they wanted skilling to enter into K-12, but I'm not too sure what's really happening in that space at all. So that's again a big void which I see, which there's a big gap between reality on the ground and what is being discussed are the buzzwords. The third buzzword which seems to be hitting everybody these days is technology. Everybody talks technology. Everybody makes presentations on some very, very good technology products. There could be math apps, there could be science apps, there could be Olympiad, test preps, ERP solutions. Eventually, and everybody says it's just rupees X per child. Okay, so the whole model is that there'll be 3,000 children. It's just X rupees per child, and so 3,000 into X is equal to Y, and that's the kind of revenue which this particular person is looking for. But then there are many such people going to the same school, to the same compulsive audience, and probably there could be a price war, and the school might just well decide to move from product A to product B, not really considering what really impact it might or might not have on the end child. So technology, while it's a great word, and I could be lynched for talking against it, I'm not talking against technology, but I think somewhere the word has been done to, we're not able to put an application to this whole concept of technology. The fourth trend that I see, I think for sure there is expansion happening. The sector seems to be very, very exciting even now for many. There are a lot of folks who want to enter India and start schools. There are a lot of folks who want to start preschools. There are a lot of preschool chains who are trying to get into K-12. So there is a lot of action happening in terms of, they feel that there is this huge market out there which is still underserved, and there is a big opportunity for us to serve that market. Yet, corollary or the dichotomy is also that you see a lot of consolidation starting to happen. There are a lot of independent schools out there who after 5 years and 7 years and 10 years who have believed that by just having a very fancy infrastructure and by probably just getting the, with due respects, just one oldest principal or the most experienced principal, they believe that this is all that's required to run the school. But the support that is to be given for the principal and the other kind of developments that are happening in the school arena is just somewhere getting missing. And many of these schools seem to be probably stuck and looking for some kind of solution to move forward, to move to the next step. So it's a funny thing. On one side there is expansion, on the other side there is consolidation. And finally, I think somewhere we seem to be missing talking about the, the mid segment, the segment of students who can afford just about 30 to 40,000 rupees a year. So which are these schools? How many primary schools are actually developing in some of the smaller towns? I'm not sure if there is some formal way of tracking what's happening out there. So in a nutshell, some very good stuff is happening in the industry. I've come into the industry about 4.5 years back, and I think in the last 4.5 years, I have seen tremendous movement in this industry, whether it is from the government side or from the private side. But I think somewhere either the communication is missing, or there is a huge mechanism which is missing to show the gap or the actuals versus the benchmarks that have been set in various forums like this. So I would be happy if you're able to get those answers in today's session.
So fabulous. Thank you so much for scanning all those buzzwords that are currently being talked about and hopefully being done to some extent. I just like to, because EdTech or digital education or computerization, as we call it, is so happening in every classroom. I just want to pick that up before I come to Rajiv very quickly. So, I totally agree with Mr. Menon here, because whether it's on the software side or on the hardware side, the school sector is the primary target for most suppliers. And I dare say that sometimes we as administrators don't really understand the end product. We don't look at it as an integrated solution. We just, picking and choose. Sometimes cost is a consideration, sometimes relationships are considerations. So, we just have a lot of products and they possibly don't align and integrate to the final last mile. Having said that, he also mentioned very rightly that it's X price per student. So that's how the pricing is done. Now, let me quickly jump to Gujarat examples, because I come from Gujarat, a lot of Calix schools are there. The latest regulation talks about a certain fee threshold, which is that for primary schooling, you have to charge about 15,000 per annum. For secondary schooling, 25,000 per annum, and for higher education, 27,000 per annum. You can very well imagine, forget about paying good salary to teachers and having high quality infrastructure. With this kind of tuition fee per annum, very little EdTech can happen. There's no way per child you can, pay any software or hardware vendor, because you're going to be struggling to make your basic costs met. Let me now quickly come to Rajiv, who's from Global. He's had a lot of experience. He's been in Microsoft. He's been with the school sector for a long time now. There is this, if we may call it a buzzword since Mr. Menon already started, it's about skilling. I mean, we know that India and China are neck to neck on skilling. These are the two largest continents where the brain power is going to come for the future. And China clearly has an edge, because their skilling programs are not only more mature, they have like some 40,000, 50,000 skilling programs compared to, my numbers may be slightly outdated, 6,000, 7,000 of India. So Skill India, as you know, which is the Prime Minister's program, is a very high focus area for the government. Now, we have been talking about bringing skilling to school education for several years. CBSE already has something in place from 9th grade. So is that really happening, Rajiv? And what's the best way we can interface skilling, which seems like a higher education kind of focus, to schooling? Or should we not? Or should it just stay where it is? What's your thought on that?
Before I answer your question on skilling, let me give you some more interesting information. I was in Ahmedabad yesterday, and I was in front of the Ahmedabad Fee Regulation Committee. This is news straight from the oven. I don't know whether any of these schools you know over there or not. And you are right. We are asking you to reduce your annual fee, the total fee you charge the student, by 80%, to 15,000 rupees per annum. No sane, high quality, self-financed school can run like that. When you point out to them, this is my balance sheet, this is my rental expense, this is my salary expense, this is my housekeeping expense, this is my academic expense, this is my transport expense, they say, we will decide what your expenses can be taken into account while deciding the fee. Forcing me then to ask them the counter question yesterday in the fee regulation committee, do you want my school to continue or not? That is the threat, the kind of threat. And in the process, the parent gets very emboldened, gets very bold. So 20% parents just forget to pay you the fee. When you remind them that the fee is due, teachers have to be paid salaries and the housekeepers their salary, they say, fine, let the government decree come, then we'll pay the fee. So in this kind of a situation, when you want to bring in, as my colleague said, new things into school education, which lead to the skilling you talked about, it becomes very difficult because, frankly speaking, it's a question of survival. Having said that, when it comes to skilling, the biggest, when we hear about India and its demographic dividend, the fact that, about 54% of our age group is going to be below 25 years of age or 35 years of age by 2022, and therefore we need to reap the demographic dividend. And then when we look around us, we find that two things are going wrong. One is the job growth is not happening, whether demonetization, whether lack of industrial growth, whether it is GST or whatever be the reason, the job growth is not happening. The bigger problem is the skilled individuals are not appearing into the market at the speed at which they should be appearing. And the reason for that is that we dichotomize education and skill development. We feel education is creating a better citizen, is getting a degree or a good school certificate, and becoming a more responsible social citizen, getting a degree. Skilling is getting a diploma, getting vocational skills, and has to happen outside of education. The result is there are a lot of organizations get into skill development outside formal education, and because of the certain peculiarities, neither are they able to get enough students to undergo skilling, nor are they able to get the kind of revenues they want, and very soon most skill developing organizations go bust. The answer lies in Skilling India and competing with China in pushing skill development into formal education. Because that is where the numbers are. That's where the captive audience is. That's where they are captive inside the four walls of the campus. They can be educated. But the main thing over there is how do you manage that situation? And there, at the school level, the skilling has to be more on the softer level, the attributes. Communication in your mother tongue or English, IT skills, life skills, etiquette. Nowadays, a lot of buzzwords are coming, as my friend talked about. Innovation and entrepreneurship, robotics, STEM, something like coding. People are talking of teaching artificial intelligence to children. All these are buzzwords. But a few fundamental attributes need to go into children at the school education level. The harder skills, whether it's insurance, retail, banking, journalism, filmmaking, has to enter either at the college scale inside the formal education sector or at classes 11 and 12. Only then can you get the numbers to take care of skilling in India and competing with China. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajiv. If the purpose of school education is to feed into college, and the purpose of college education is to feed into industry, if you have to work as a linear, each one benefiting the other, then there's no way schools can ignore skilling, because that is the requirement and that is the huge gap that the industry is facing in India today. So the more we become present to skilling at school level, and the more we kind of meet that gap, so much better for us.
But I just want to add a point to, I completely agree. Let's look at a simple situation. If there is a class, and I'm not talking about the high-end schools here, I'm talking about the mid-segment or even the lower segment schools, the government schools. Let's take a class with about 40 to 50 children. The fact is that only about 15 to 20 of these kids are really going to be doing well and progressing into what is called the intellectual or the educative way of going forward. The remaining 35 to 45 folks or kids have all entered thinking that they should become doctors and engineers. But clearly they just don't have it in them to go down that path. And that's when the whole dropouts start to happen. And when the dropouts start to happen, then they start getting into the same jobs like chauffeurs or electricians or refrigeration experts, but they don't choose it. They end up taking it by default and not by design. And then starts the social stigma around it. And then starts the frustration around it. Vis-a-vis what he was mentioning, getting skilling into the school. Use all this technology to find out which are the kids who are likely to go through, which are the kids who might get stuck. We talk about multiple intelligences, we talk about understanding the child's psychometrics and understanding the way the child behaves. Use that very data to start bringing in the skills at an early stage in the school, and then start to bring in that whole culture of making the child realize that, hey, you know what, becoming a chauffeur is a good stuff. Training you in that area is good. There's a driver training institute coming up with your driver training skills and with knowledge of English, basic mathematics. I think you'll do damn well. I mean, even today, let's look at all of us. An Uber driver who talks to you in English for 2 minutes and welcomes you very nicely and has a lovely car is far, I mean, you feel damn good sitting in that car. Vis-a-vis another Uber driver who may not talk English, who is not so well groomed. But that's by accident. But what if we create this right at a school level? So I tend to agree. I just wanted to add this as a kind of
Thank you, thank you. Now let me come to Anirudh on my right. He has the benefit of having 7 decades of experience, or at least we say the group has had. Now, on the one hand, when you have so many years of experience, there is a way of building an institution. You know, the old ways that have stood them in very good stead. Are you feeling challenged? Are you feeling like you have to give up some of the old ways in order to make way for the new order? Or is it easy to integrate, or what would you say? I mean, clearly there are lots of changes happening. At the same time, old practices that have been tried and tested are very good, and we must take it forward, especially in India, which is huge on, we're one of the oldest civilizations. So how do you bring in this kind of, blend?
So, I'll talk about that part a little later. First, when I was told about this topic to speak on the changing trends in education, so I was in dire straits, whether to talk about good, bad, or ugly. Everything is happening, in this K-12 segment these days. So first talking about good things, which are happening, the good trends, yes. I mean, linking it to our, 7 decades of, experience or legacy, or, being a part of this educational fraternity for that time. Earlier, the entire school education was revolving around just academics. Fine, now with this evolution of technology, with all the buzzwords like, artificial intelligence, robotics, your augmented reality, cloud computing. So yes, I mean, these are the good things happening, because what we are teaching in schools and colleges also per se, we are still not sure about that, what we are preparing them for, the kind of jobs they'll be lending themselves into, 10 years down the line. So yeah, I mean, so it's good that, like all these things, right from changes in the administration to the activities on the academic front. So a lot of good things, happening in the school, and talking about the, global citizen, a lot of intercontinental linkages happening, schools tying up with schools in all different subcontinents. So yeah, I mean, a lot of good things happening. As far as our group is concerned, like we started in 1946. So luckily, like the founders and the, promoters who are looking after the group in 50s, 60s, 70s. So fortunately, they'll be keeping pace with the changing trends and bringing in a lot of technology, whether it was assessment tools or whether it was capacity building of teachers, whether it was the infrastructure. Earlier many few schools used to consult professional architects and interior designers. Now anybody thinking of setting up a new school or a new venture, firstly goes to the architect and the interior designers. A lot of money goes into infrastructure part. So earlier this was not happening. So we have been trying to not only improve our existing schools, but setting up new schools, what we call 21st century schools. So we've been changing ourselves. We've been whether it has been administration. Earlier there used to be a principal, head clerk, and two, three more people who used to handle the entire school. So now every area, be it the front office operations or visitor management, estate management, housekeeping, event management, so everything has become more of a specialized area. And many of these things the schools, they have started outsourcing also. So if we talk about academics, now every school is kind of a smart school, digitally equipped school. So these are a lot of good things which have creeped into our system. When you were talking about this issues revolving fee management, fee regulation, I think yes, in the last 10 years the government has suddenly kind of trying to I'll not say regulate, over-regulate the entire this particular segment. So which is not kind of going down well with the schools, most of the schools. And the ugly part, like the students committing suicides, a lot of pressure on the children to perform, like competitions, like 99% being the cutoff percentage in some of the good colleges in India. So lot of adolescence issues, with the advent of internet and social networking sites, Facebook and other things. So they have brought along with them their own challenges. So I think in times to come, not only for organization like us which has been into education for the last 7 decades, even for the people who are venturing into K-12 segment school education now also, it's not going to be an easy task ahead. So be terms of the scenario towards the school, from the judiciary, from the government, from the parental side, they're all looking towards the school as you said, some kind of a mafia which is just there to fleece the parents. So it's going to be very challenging times ahead, and it's going to be survival of the fittest. We also need to do course correction when we are talking about the government regulating us. I think the best thing which can be done is to self-regulate ourselves, and set the parameters, do away with, if at all, any unethical practices. So otherwise, I think it's going to be very, very tough. Somehow we have not only sustained, we have grown also. And another good thing, which I like to talk about, earlier there was no focus on education, particularly school education. Now with the present government, setting up utter tinkering labs in the schools, a lot of funding going on into the schools. So yes, there is a focus on school education from the government side, which is good thing happening, but we need to self-regulate, we need to look within also, otherwise it's going to be very, very tough call.
Thank you so much, Anirudh. We may have time for 1 or 2 questions. Anybody in the audience that would like to, even sharing, it doesn't have to be a question. We're all academicians in the room. We'd like to hear your opinions too.
Just to prop up the mood a bit, the fact is it's still an exciting industry. I think the number of NBFCs who are mushrooming purely in the school financing space has gone up tremendously over the last 2-3 years. There are education, real estate, infrastructure fund companies which are coming in. You know, there are a lot of private equity and venture players who are looking at this industry very, very excitedly. So the sector is still a very sunrise industry. I mean, there seems to be a sudden bloom in the entire hall. It's not as bad as what we're just trying to bring in different aspects to the whole discussion here. But yeah, it's an exciting industry. So now we could get some questions.
I absolutely agree. We are here for the long haul, right? Everything will come and go. Every industry has its ups and downs. So the education industry is just going through a downturn. That doesn't mean that's going to be forever. It's going to change. But having said that, everybody in this room is an ambassador for the industry. It's important that we all play our roles. We all become spokespeople. Because like Anirudh rightly said, we should just do course correction. If there are any practices that is viewed, for example, it's all about regulation in the sense how it's viewed. Regulation has become a very hard word, so let me just not use that. Take for example CBSE schools. Earlier, you could run a stationery store in a CBSE school, right? It was about just convenience of parents. Instead of parents धक्के नहीं खाएं एक शू शॉप में, एक टेक्स्ट बुक शॉप में, एक स्टेशनरी शॉप में, rather than that एक जगह पे सब चीज़ मिलती थी. Because there was no notification from anybody in the government to say whether that was right or wrong, it was viewed by everybody as the right thing to do. It was viewed as a customer-friendly thing. If you had a tuck shop or if you had a stationery shop, you were being very, very, mindful for the needs for the parents. The minute CBSE said that selling textbooks or any other, facilitation like shoes or, water bottles, who knows what, is the wrong thing, it is to be considered as commercialization. Just see how the whole mood changed. Parents start
which is why, the gentleman on the right talked about, and he said that it's not all gloom and doom. For example, in the government schools, the enrollment has fallen by 4% per annum, whereas the enrollment in the private sector is going up by 8%. Even the Minister of Education, HRD, said that. As the gentleman on the right said, there is a need to self-regulate. Yes, okay, you're overpricing textbooks, wrong practice, you're hiking fee by double digits every year. After all, the middle class has a pocket which it has to protect. At the same time, so it's better to self-regulate and go to the government and say we are self-regulating, we are protecting ourselves and the interests of parents and children. At the same time, to introduce regulation which deters the private schools from operating and threatens their very survival and existence is a matter of concern. So I think we have to be in a continuous state of dialogue with the government to make them understand that their costs are valid and therefore fees are valid. But yes, if there's excess in certain areas, self-regulation or government regulation needs to curb that, but not to threaten the survival of private schools. Only then we can bring in technologies like robotics, innovation, we talked about, which can improve the innovation education, which is what the trend should be all about.
Just for the sake of information of the House, for the last 2-3 years we've been seeing, promoters, principals, spending a lot of time in courts with the lawyers rather than spending time in the schools. So we, group of people, thought about doing something about it. So we have, in collaboration with FICCI, we've launched a forum called FICCI Arise. That is, Alliance for Reimagining School Education. So we roped in one of the best legal brains in India, and we have developed our own model code of conduct. You see, regulation since education is in concurrent list, and from state to state, the regulations, the norms are different. Like in Punjab says you can't increase more than 8%. In Gujarat, they say something else. In UP, it is something else. Like in Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra. So, we thought of, what is the, solution to all this, what is happening, confronting all of us these days. So we've hired, one of the best legal brains in India, and we have come up with a model code of conduct for schools. So now we are tying up with every state. We are meeting the education ministers, the education secretaries, and we have fixed up a meeting with the Mr. Anil Swarup also, with the MHRD officials, where a lot of education secretaries from various states are also coming. They've been invited. So when we were talking about self-regulation, so we've told the government that yes, she rightly said that, we also need to draw a line somewhere. Fine. So we've tried to, come together and, drafted certain set of rules. So that, instead of state telling us what to do and what not to do, so we've told them, okay, this is what we have thought about us. So you look into it, and if that is okay with you, so let's have a uniform model code of conduct pan-India. So that's what we are trying to do, and hopefully, within next few months, we should be able to succeed. Thank you.
Hello, madam. Question. Yeah. So for a change, this question comes from a student, not from an education institution. So basically, you people were talking about how to bring changes in yourself so that the government doesn't push for it. I know it is very difficult for the educational institutions for the last couple of years with the kind of regulations per se from the government itself. But my question is about the learning outcome. Everything boils down to the learning outcome from the schools. I come from a remote village area of Gorakhpur and Uttar Pradesh, and learning outcome is something which is really pathetic in these sort of areas, right? So I would like to first of all ask these questions to the panel, that what are the changes which have been witnessed by the entire industry, the education industry, per se the teacher training sessions, and what kind of changes that we have brought about in the teacher training sessions. Because see, technology is a very good thing. Students are very much, taking up technology tools and all that. But the teachers are not that much, involved in getting all these things, and they find it really very difficult to use these sort of tools. So what kind of teacher training modules which schools individually have developed that might be helpful for the other schools to understand? Secondly, the second question is that I really find it really difficult to understand that why the education system in India, especially the private education players, don't have some kind of a mechanism to check out that a particular student is made for a particular thing, right? We in the family is forced to take up education for whatever they understand, right? So why there is no mechanism to find out the bent of mind of a student for, okay, so this particular student is meant for this. So is there any kind of thing going on in India to find out these sort of changes in the education system or not? So this is my question.
Sure. So that's going to be the last question we take. I wish I could see you. This is too much light, but you're in this direction.
Yeah.
Let me try and answer both your questions. Your first question was about learning outcomes. I'm totally with you. Until we define what is the outcome that we are doing this teaching learning process for, it's anybody's guess. So let me tell you what the country has done for that. Learning outcome was a term that international baccalaureate schools began to talk about because it was a term that was coined in Geneva. But I have to say this to you, that India has at a policy level adopted it. If you remember, if anybody's read it in the room, learning outcome was a word used in the bill, this year's bill, right? So when the education the part came from when Arun Jaitley was reading the education part, he actually talked about learning outcome. So at a policy level, it's there. But because till it comes down, trickles down, and everybody, especially rural people, can get, it's going to be at some time, but the thinking is in the right order. The second question about teacher training, CBSE has done a lot, as you know, TET, etc., to ensure that teachers stay upgraded in skills. There are tests being conducted. So tests for two kinds, one is skill and one is competency. So again, at a policy level, it's there. It has to hit, the ground, and that's the gap that you're seeing. Having said that, I have to just mention that nobody wants to be a teacher anymore. students don't opt to be teachers. So if you don't get quality people who want to be teachers, the delivery is going to definitely suffer. But both your concerns at a policy level have thankfully been met. And let's keep our fingers crossed that at an implementation level, we'll see it sooner than later. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
I just want to, sorry, I know there's a time paucity, but the third part on this whole technology and the data, you see, we keep talking about big data. We keep talking about data analytics. This is exactly what we should ask our technology partners to start doing inside the classroom. Understand how the child's mind is so that we know which direction and which route to take. And I'd just like to conclude, before you conclude, Manjula, that somewhere I think we should start following the Dubai model. We should start having a KHDA kind of a, I know we have a body, but I think there is no concept of really trying to understand which school is in which category and how they're doing. I know folks like ELETS and many other forums rank schools, but what happens after that? Okay, there is a ranking, and this ranking helps the parents to choose the schools. But is there some big, does the MHRD call up the best school and give them a big award and make a big show and dance about it? I think not. I think if you work on some of these areas, probably it could be a step to go forward.
So fabulous. Let's just round up the session. We talked about regulatory. We don't want to make it sound like monsoon. There's going to be sunshine really soon. We talked about new trends. We talked about buzzwords. We talked about EdTech. We talked about a lot of things that are happening in the country. We request that everybody in this room continues to hold the flag for private education going high, or whichever level of education you are. You are the #1 ambassador. Please influence parents. Please influence academicians. Please influence thought leaders so that we can not only shine again, but deliver, because this is the only industry that is the backbone for development in the country, which is private schooling of India. And 43% of school-going children are in our responsibility. Having said that, thank you so much for your time, ladies and gentlemen, and all the panelists. Thank you so much for all the value addition.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Just wait for a minute, ma'am. It has been a wonderful session where we saw discussions on the problems of running private school chains in India, the practical problems, what can be done in the policy level, and what can be done by the school owners also, and also about the society as a whole. So I think that was an insightful session, and we saw interesting Q&A also. A lot of pertinent questions were raised, and I sincerely thank Vinesh Menon, Dr. Manjula Pooja Shroff, Anirudh Gupta, and Rajiv Katyal for giving insight into the practical problem of running big school chains, private school chains in India. Thanks a lot. I request Dr. Bishwajit Sahar from Central Board of Secondary Education, CBSE, to come on stage and hand over the mementos to our speakers. Dr. Bishwajit Sahar. A big round of applause for him. Yeah, if you can. To Mr. Vinesh Menon, CEO of Vibgeo Group, to Dr. Manjula Pooja Shroff, MD and CEO, Calorix Group, to Mr. Anirudh Gupta, CEO, DCM Group of Schools, and Mr. Rajiv Katyal, Country Director, Global Schools Foundation India. And can we have a group photo with all the panelists? Can we have a group photo together? A big round of applause for a wonderful panel. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Thanks. So now we come to industry presentation. It will be given by the founder of Nischal's Smart Learning Solution Private Limited, by Mr. Nischal. Can we have Mr. Nischal on stage, please? Yeah. A big round of applause for this young Turk, and I have heard him last year in WS, and I want all you to hear his story. It's a very interesting story of him. I invite Mr. Nischal on stage. Yeah. A big round of applause for him.